Hello, I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart. You're joining us for our CleanStart perspective discussion on the CleanStart Progress Report. If you want to read the report in full, go check out our website, cleanstart.org. But now, Gary Simon, founder of CleanStart, and myself, Executive Director, discuss what we discovered during the report. My audio is pretty bad during it, so please forgive it, and I hope you enjoy it. If you like this, please subscribe for more.
In the initial CleanStart Progress Report back in 2005, we identified just 31 companies. At that point, we set a goal to reach $5 billion in revenue and 10,000 jobs. Now, this year, we went out and connected with all those companies, and there's 111 companies. There's been some news since we published the report, and that's over 9,900 jobs and 4.1 billion in revenue. We're right on the cusp of getting that ecosystem that we identified that is needed to be self-sustaining. The cycle is beginning. We identified the 40 new companies. There's 1.95 billion in investment. We have a very diverse set of companies here and over 6,000 jobs in manufacturing.
Well, I think the main thing is that we're getting to that self-sustaining level with the sector. And we talked about this, and Dennis, you were there, and we talked about, at what point do we have a very robust clean tech sector in the area? And we said, well, it's got to have enough activity that you can create new businesses out of existing ones, that there's lots of job opportunity for the graduates of the technical universities and colleges here. Investors are interested. You're getting in the media fairly frequently, and we're very close to that right now. The 10,000 jobs and 5 billion in revenue was a bit of a guess based on everything we had in front of us, but it does seem to be a trigger. So that's been very heartening to us. We've been at this for 17 years now.
Our time does fly, doesn't it, Gary?
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected it took that long, Dennis, but it did. And there are hiccups along the way with a recession in the middle and the pandemic, but it's moving along. So I think we'll come back to it. I mean, there's still some things that we need to see to make it a really healthy sector, and they haven't quite been achieved, but we'll get into that in the discussion.
So what kind of growth do you kind of expect in this for us to see in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, frankly, I was surprised at the amount of growth that we found in the last 2 to 3 years. I would have thought we would have taken a hit more than we did. And so we almost doubled the number of employees, and 25% plus growth in revenue. I think particularly the growth in employees is going to be hard to sustain at the same doubling every 2 or 3 years. But I do expect the revenue to continue to increase at about 15% per year. I think we're at a level where that's become sort of locked in, and it might be a bit above that. But the toughest one I would see is continuing that growth in employees, and some of that was pent up demand that sprang back within the last 12 months, I think. But the growth isn't over. A lot of it's, as I said, become self-sustaining.
Now, where do you see a lot of the growth kind of coming from? In our progress report, we saw a lot of growth in low carbon fuels, in mobility with Siemens. Grey Rock had tremendous activity. But where do you see kind of the future growth coming from?
Well, I mean, interestingly, we'd always thought that waste conversion, biomass conversion was sort of an area where there was going to be a lot of activity, and that it's taken time to get there. But I think we're seeing that arrive now. We've seen this big plant in the Riverside area in San Joaquin County, the Aemetis biomass. They're making fuels. A lot of success with Infinium. They're not putting their manufacturing plants here in Sacramento, but certainly having a corporate headquarters here is very important. Sierra Energy in Davis. So I think that's a big part of it. But if you look at, where did the big numbers come in jobs? Because we have Siemens Mobility and they continue to be very successful in signing new contracts to build electric light rail vehicles, they propel a lot of the numbers forward. More with other things in mobility. I mean, we've seen it now in the acquisition of Clipper Creek by Enable. There's going to be other things that happen with companies in that area. And building efficiency. Still some surprises there. Hank, its acquisition by JLL in Chicago, other things that Velara Building Systems are doing. So, when we look over the numbers, that tends to be where the concentration of activity is, which is not surprising. It's all pretty much physical stuff. There are a lot of software and apps being developed around clean energy in this area, but we have a higher proportion of things that are actual physical products than in some other areas like silicon.
Let me add to that, Gary.
Sure.
One of the things our company is doing, because we do have our big projects are really outside of California for now.
Yeah.
Texas, Canada, North Dakota, a lot of projects in Europe and then in Japan. But in order to support all these projects, we're building a tech center in West Sacramento. And I see this as other companies grow, they're gonna need their technical capability here in Sacramento. And that I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area in my education years and saw what happened in biotech and in computers. And that's what happened there. A lot of that was done in garages like Hewlett Packard and other companies of that type. And then now they got these, as of course you go to the peninsula area, got these big companies doing a lot of R&D. I think that's what you're going to see in Sacramento.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, clearly, you're doing it. Origin Materials is doing it. Sierra Energy is going after a fundraise in this coming year that will put more of that R&D activity here. Yeah, and that also has sort of a virtuous cycle to it, because once you get the tech centers, then there's going to be spin outs from that. We don't know what they are, but that's a very predictable outcome.
And the other thing that happens is, like our tech center here in West Sacramento, that'll grow, and we're able to attract people from other countries. They're very happy to come to the Sacramento area because they see this as a very important area. So we're going to start getting more and more really excellent candidates to work in our sectors.
As validation for that, I was out in Sacramento last weekend, and I came across a guy with an Infinium shirt on.
Oh,
And
okay.
he was an international engineer that you guys have brought here, and he was just relaxing, enjoying his time. And so absolutely, you guys are absolutely recruiting engineers from around the world to turn Sacramento into a clean tech sector. Some of the kind of, I guess, rising technologies that Gary mentioned kind of across the area, I wanted to quickly share my screen again here. So at CleanEdge, full disclosure, I'm an analyst at CleanEdge. We track, where's clean tech, where's the maturation in the different technologies. And if you look kind of at this, kind of expected maturation curve here, Sacramento we've got companies all across the board here. Gary mentioned, even software ones like Zero Home that we've highlighted recently with their solar software that's working with cities to electrify buildings. EV fast charger or EV charging infrastructure levels 1 and 2. Clipper Creek just got purchased by Enphase. Biodiesel, renewable gas. Even we highlight, Box Tower and there are microgrids that are going around that are being used more and more by utilities and remote areas to provide power that's more reliable than diesel generators. We've got Lion Electric working on buses and bus repairs that help kind of accelerate out of this area with support from a lot of, I know, California-based grants. UC Davis is doing tons in agriculture. I expect to see more companies out of there. And part of this clean tech sector is that we've had here is now building a really strong network with, I guess, related groups like AgStart out in Woodland. All this kind of comes together and building the sector and trying to reach our goals. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of investment. We talked about that 1.95 billion in the last 2 years that has been invested in the area. But I think what we haven't really seen, I guess, is a lot of these big sustained companies that have the large exits. No, Cisco, Oracle, or I guess more of established companies that are later in that adoption curve. When do you think that's going to happen, Gary? Why do you think it hasn't happened yet?
Well, I mean, it's always slow with physical products to get companies to that level. Everybody thinks it's going to be an overnight story like Tesla, which, if you knew anything about Tesla's history, it wasn't an overnight success. It took decades. But that's one of the things that I mentioned before that we haven't seen yet. The creation of a lot of wealth by people exiting companies, founders, et cetera. And then you have the Larry Ellisons, the John Chambers, Mark Andreessen, et cetera, type names that say, yeah, you can really do well investing in this area. It will probably take more companies going public. There are downsides to that, and I applaud anybody who's cautious in taking a company public, because usually people don't understand what a cost that imposes on a company. So I'm not advocating that, but we haven't seen big exits. We haven't seen huge wealth creation in the area, and that's probably coming. But we've got companies maturing along the way. So Origin is public now. At some point, Dennis and his company, Infinium, may cross the threshold where they want to access public capital as being a cheap source of their growth, but they're not there yet. So it'll be an organic thing, but I think that's still going to go slowly. But one thing that's important, even recognized by the guy that you ran across with the T-shirt, is people are interested in areas and coming to work in an area where they don't want to be alone. They don't want to be the only chemical engineer working on waste conversion in the area. They like to know that there is a network, that there are like-minded people, and that they can exchange ideas, and even potentially there's other job opportunities for them in the area when they move. That's happening. People are more attracted here now because they see there's more than just the one opportunity. And that's really something we wanted to latch onto when we started this whole project, that if you can base your growth on grassroots up, you create much longer term stable conditions for the continuing growth and success of the sector.
What's also important is, when I used to travel a lot to other countries, especially in Asia, they'd always ask, well, what is California doing in this particular area of environmental regulations, et cetera? So California has for a long time been recognized as a leader in environmental stewardship. And we're lucky we're all in Sacramento, I especially am. And I think you'll see in the future, as we grow with these companies, that it'll be recognized as a hotspot for clean energy, renewable energy, et cetera. So I think that's going to come.
Yeah, no, it's on its way. And one of the metrics that reviewers of, where are the hotspots used is, do you have any corporate HQs of companies that have national and international impact? Well, now you're one of them, Dennis. Origin is another, Sierra may be a third. So yeah, we can now say, there's companies that people have heard of that are headquartered here. So it is more of a hotspot.
And we just saw SBI relocate their headquarters from China to Sacramento.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and there's a whole host of reasons why I think companies want to come to Sacramento or California in general. I think part of it's the funding, but I think another big portion of it is that we do have these strong ecosystems that they can just kind of come and connect into that are very kind of open. Our work with Blue Tech Valley, Sac State, UC Davis, and a lot of these ecosystems, we're fairly connected and try to work with the government, which is providing a lot of resources, whether it's EPIC for early stage funding through the CalSeed, which we've seen a lot of companies in Sacramento get a big boost from, to later stage later stage projects that might come from the the Air Resources Board or Air District that can help companies move further along as they prove out their technology. There's also Cal Test Bed for that kind of intermediate area. And I kind of want to highlight it, since Dennis mentioned, building that kind of tech space in West Sacramento. We also have the CMC that has popped up in the past year or so, and they're providing a lot of kind of technology services for companies that are doing research and trying to figure out how they can move kind of their technology along. And they're partnering that along a lot with job training. When we look at a lot of the jobs that we have in the area, Siemens Mobility is one that I think it's the largest employer in the clean tech space, but there are countless other ones that are in buildings, HVAC, electrification, installing EV chargers. Now, other reports have mentioned that our clean economy here, it's over 40,000 jobs, where ours says that there's 9,900, and this is part of why our numbers are a bit smaller, because we highlight that the companies that are innovating and creating new technologies that are dependable. So I was hoping Gary could kind of elaborate on that about what the difference between those two numbers is, and when we get to that 10,000, 5 billion in revenue, what does that mean for the giant clean tech sector that's here?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to be careful on what's the definition whenever you look at a data set, but the Brookings Institution was the one that did the big study, I think back in 2011, and then it updated it 2 or 3 years later for Valley Vision, and they all talk about the local clean economy, but they include all the employees of the Air Resources Board, Cal EPA in general, the CEC as part of the clean economy, which is valid for what they're talking about. Those are related to the clean economy, but we wanted to focus on the growth sector and specifically business. So we don't include a lot of the government environmentally related jobs. Brookings also included all the employees of SMUD. And SMUD, they recognized as being on a clean energy path, but while they are a business, we didn't include them in the high growth sectors that we're trying to monitor. So that's the difference. So yeah, the 9,900 jobs is a slice of the total clean economy, but one that we consider to be the source of a lot of the future growth and wealth creation.
There's another advantage that Sacramento and California have, that we're a progressive state and a progressive city. If we're able to attract people from other countries, and in some parts of our country, as you well know, politically, they're not welcome.
Right.
Whereas in Sacramento and California, they are welcome. We have if you go to the Bay Area, I go back and visit Stanford every once in a while. I was amazed at in going to a restaurant that you only see maybe 10% of the people are of European origin. Everybody else is from some other part of the world. And that's very important, being able to attract the very best people, the very best scientists and engineers from all over the world. And if you look at, this was an article in Chemical and Engineering News, 20% of the openings in the country, in the United States, for scientists and researchers, is 20% is in California, less than 1% in Texas. I think
Yeah.
it didn't even show up. I think it was even less than 0.5%. So we're able to attract, and that's why California is a great economy. We're able to attract the best in the world.
I think, I think that goes hand in hand with where you say, diversity is a strength.
Yep.
If, the more diversity that you have in your company, in your ecosystem, the easier it is going to be to connect with people. That's one of the reasons we built the trailer and have partnered with CRP, Community Resource Project, and are reaching out to other organizations because in this clean tech transition, in this energy transition, in this revolution, it has to include everybody. We can't just do it with just people that can afford Teslas. And I think definitely at the state level, and I think more and more businesses are starting to realize this, but you can really improve people's lives and really tell a great story about your product if you collaborate with the entire community, if you incorporate the entire community in your development. If you're going to, if you're in Infinium and you're going to be working all around the world, it's going to be incredibly helpful if you have international people working for you, people that can go to other countries and show that we're an international company, we're an international community, and we can listen to you and work with you.
I think, oh, that's great. But the other thing, just the reality check. Yeah, we're attracting a lot of people, but I think there's a natural tendency for manufacturing when you're really focusing on bringing costs down, getting manufacturing close to the area of need. Yeah, we're going to see people build plants in France, in Canada, in Texas, and stuff like that. Not necessarily a bad thing. If we're on top of the intellectual creation of the new technology and have the tech centers like Dennis has talked about, that may be our niche. And I know there's a lot of worry in California about the loss of manufacturing jobs, but I don't know how to reverse that. Bringing the best talent here and giving them a comfortable life and a comfortable community within which to work, that's really a strength. And I think that will carry us forward.
Well, just take a look at what's happened in California in the last 15 or so years. California, when I came back to California, was the 7th largest economy in the world. Now it's number 5. So, even though we've lost manufacturing per se, we're a high-tech state and we're doing better economically than we've ever done.
Yeah. The signals are in the right direction, and we're just hoping to keep up the momentum to continue that.
I also wanted to ask Judy kind of not only a question because she's here. At their resources board, there's been a lot of grant funding supporting communities, regulating various emissions that have resulted in innovation over the past year, verifying that people are doing what they're saying. So as you've kind of seen the clean tech sector evolve in Greater California and Sacramento, what are some things that have stood out to you, or that this or the report that we did highlights?
So, a lot of things are going on. As a matter of fact, right now, as we speak, the AB 32 scoping plan is going before our board. The scoping plan is the blueprint that outlines basically over the next 5 years how we're going to meet our climate change goals, which is bottom line carbon neutrality by 2045. There are some, obviously transportation and mobility are huge. LCFS plays an incredible role. The biomass sector, as Gary mentioned, I've been working with biomass companies now for the last 20 years. It has taken forever to get these facilities or even mobile units out to do forest management, and looking at how to utilize all the byproducts, be it electricity, the biochar, the syngas. But OPR has been given some money, and so we've got 5 different regions where there's pilot programs going on. The biggest difficulty for those firms is basically getting a contract in place to guarantee the waste feedstock for up to 15 years so that they can actually turn a profit. So we've got joint powers going on and some agreements going in place to help knock down some of those challenges. Building decarbonization, huge, a lot of activity going on in that field. And then when it comes to ag, everything from smart ag to regenerative ag to robotics. Really looking at how to engage with almond farming. I work with some of the almond farmers who have, spent millions of dollars getting robotics such that now they're actually efficient and functioning really well for them. And then the other thing that I'll say is this year, there is an unprecedented amount of funding available, unprecedented. And all different kinds of areas, everything from zero emission equipment. We've got a regulation coming in place for zero emission forklifts. Obviously the transportation side, getting everything from light duty up to heavy duty, vehicles out there and providing some type of a voucher so that folks will actually purchase them. And so I really encourage the businesses to use things like the funding wizard to see what grants and rebates are available out there. We've got, a lot of activities going on in the AB 617 communities, which is the community protection program. And, you mentioned your trailer. I would like to talk to you guys about that later on and see how we can get you out into some of these areas, because I think that's a really cool thing to have. And obviously having folks be able to touch, see, and, visually understand is huge. So a lot of really cool things going on, and the next couple of years are going to continue to be full of activity.
Thank you, Judy. I want to kind of highlight one thing that I kind of got out of those. That the state doesn't like necessarily to do experimental stuff on new technologies, but they are definitely here to help a lot of these technologies get over that kind of finish line. One of the big parts of, of all the new technologies is de-risking it, I guess, for the mass market. And that, that's where you're able to get into things, like yield codes and project finance. So, I'm really hopeful, especially on the biomass movement and the gasification sort of things that you had talked about there, that they can really demonstrate that, hey, these aren't just things, cool ideas in the lab. These are things that are possible and can be delivered around the state.
And a lot of these technologies have been proven in Europe, and so what I will say is one of the cool things that has happened is under the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, the iBank now has the Climate Catalyst Fund, which is really supporting getting biomass facilities up and going. So anybody that's got that kind of technology looking for funding, Dan Adler over at the iBank is the person to connect with.
Definitely making a note of that. Thank you. So Gary, what surprises came out in this report for you? What's something that stood out?
Well, I think the growth itself was surprising, but also, just the number of companies. We cracked 100 a few years ago. We lost companies, went down to 85, but now we're back up to 111. And in point of fact, people should understand, whenever you do one of these data surveys, they're wrong the next day. So even after we published these numbers, we found a half dozen more companies that should have been on the list. But the nice thing about publishing numbers like this is people, you search every database you can find and every source in the public record. And then what really triggers it is somebody reads our report and they say, hey, we're not on it. Why did you miss us? And they're like, because you're invisible. You're not on Google. And, so now we know that there's an even bigger number. So that was a surprise. There for a long time, we were just kind of hovering around 90 to 100 companies, and now we seem to have broken through and gone forward. We've talked about the growth in the employment, all of that, but I expect more surprises in the future. So one thing that I think we can conclude from having done this work for so long, and this is like our 6th or 7th progress report, it's never dull. Just when you think you understand what's going on, you realize you don't. So the surprises are yet to be found.
I have to say my big surprise from it is the amount of, I guess, companies working around LCFS and how big of an impact that has actually had. We had, emission control, which came out of Grant Farm / Momentum. And we had a talk with earlier this year with Daniel Minez of UC Davis about just all the reductions that have come from that. And we're consistently seeing, people say like, hey, I have a project and I can make it happen because of that. Our last talk at Sierra Energy, they also had other experts, I guess, in the gasification area. I mean, that's a big play, and it's what's bringing a lot of people together to do projects that are reducing emissions here and outside the state. Because once they do one here or duplicate one here, they end up, going to other portions where they have older, farms or gasification technologies, and hey, we can do this better. So that was the big kind of standout to me is, I guess, the low carbon fuels. Flyers, the traditional gas company, is really going into that and investing in that and doing work in our region around it. It was a big surprise.
Yeah, and Judy, you mentioned in what you said there, the importance of the LCFS program. We just had a meetup and had a couple companies talk about where they are on waste conversion and alternate fuels. And it's amazing how many people in the audience, how many people in the discussion don't realize how big the impact of the LCFS rules are. And they're absolutely astonished how that changes the economics of their projects. So I know you're like 5 years or more into LCFS, but there's plenty of virgin territory out there to educate people and get them to take advantage of.
Well, and there's no doubt for companies on the biomass side or pellet manufacturers talking about LCFS and the benefits, that pushes them over the edge to move forward with a number of their projects. And LCFS, the amendments, it is going to be modified next year. So folks that are interested should certainly sign up on the Air Resources Board's listserv for LCFS so that notifications come over and they can provide input into any modifications that are going to happen to that reg, because it really is important. And emission control is very engaged. I work with those guys on a lot of different things. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have chatted with them as well.
Yeah,
and because of LC, because of LCFS, as you know, Amazon is one of our biggest partners, and they were going to be using our low carbon fuel in their trucks in California, and they'll have a couple of trucks that have basically signs on the side of their truck saying that this truck is using low carbon fuels. So that surely has driven Amazon to take a big role in California, and hopefully they'll move more projects here.
Right. So is it also going to say low carbon fuels brought to you by Infinium?
I don't know exactly what it's always up to them how they want to advertise. We just had a big get together with Amazon and they took a lot of videos, but we never know what they're going to come up with. So we'll see.
Got to work on the logo.
That's it.
Well, that's great. Well, we're kind of running close to the end here. Dan Kellen has joined us. Dan, you've been there, I mean, absolutely from the inception. That first meeting that we had with you, UC Davis, and a lot of things that came out of MTI. So you have quite a perspective as to what this progress report represents. Do you want to offer any perspective comments? You're on mute. If you're still there. Okay, he may have gotten onto another task, but this whole thing began in 2003 and 2004, and with a meeting right there in the UC Davis Engineering. So,
Well, and Gary, we've been there with you since the beginning, and
that's right.
thanks to you, you know, we owe a lot of our progress to what you started.
Well, just trying to keep the pot stirred. All right, I think we need to turn it back to you, Thomas, for a wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gary. Hope you guys enjoyed our discussion. It is online. We have people watching there. But I want to kind of repeat the call to action that I made earlier at the Clean Tech Showcase. So collaborate. We mentioned emission control. They work so closely with the state that they're able to, create a good technology and really understand it. And collaborating with Grey Rock has helped them. So if you're out there, collaborate with each other, the community, attend state things, make sure that your voice is heard, get involved. And I want to thank all of you for attending.